Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Leadership Trademark Podcast. We are very excited to introduce a new series focused on the tools of leadership trademarked. As you've listened to our previous episodes, you have listened to the wisdom of extraordinary guests who have generally shared their personal journeys, but now we are absolutely ecstatic to unveil the next chapter of our podcast mission, a chapter that promises to arm you with the essential tools needed to craft your unique path as a leader. In this particular episode, we have the privilege of hosting a truly remarkable guest, Dr. Mary Grogan. She'll be sharing her profound wisdom on self-reflection, encapsulated beautifully in the 7 C's of global leadership. Enjoy! Welcome to episode 7 of Leadership Trademark. I'm your host, Sylvia Fraser, and together with Leslie Riley and Roz Kingsmill, we welcome a remarkable guest who embodies the essence of our show. Dr. Mary Grogan is not your ordinary educator. She is a true champion of social justice and a leading advocate for a humanist approach to leadership. With a career spanning diverse communities and continents, she is a true global force for positive change, and Mary is the author of The 7 C's of Global Leadership. Welcome to our show, Mary, and so pleased to have you here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and to be in your presence tonight. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you again. And so I'll lead in with a question to get us started here. What do you see as the real challenge right now?
That's an excellent question because it's simplistic and my answer isn't. But I think the rapid rate of change is the most challenging aspect of what's happening now because it's happening on every level and it's happening collectively. It's happening around systems. It's happening globally. It's raising more questions at a speed of complexity that leaders are wanting to react, which is a very dangerous thing to do with change. So the rapid, complex process of change on every level, whether it's geographic, the migrants, whether it's education not keeping up with the technology, whether it's the economy, whether it's housing, whether it's racist, emergent issues that are happening in polarized politics, wherever it is, it's the rapid, complex change is causing a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And I think never before have we seen on every level, every institution is challenged, and the values that are underpinning those are being challenged, which is fabulous opportunity for innovation. So I'm not sure that the challenge that we're experiencing on every level has developed the leaders to absolutely see this as an opportunity, particularly if they come from a paradigm of the old traditional model that I'm in charge, I'm in control, I can't show anybody I'm going crazy myself. I'm not sure what to do. What's the latest research? I don't need research. I'm in charge. I've done this. So there's that whole lack of preparation for a kind of leadership that I call global leadership, which is collaborative, inclusive, messy, wonderful, dynamic, uncertain, and absolutely open to possibilities. And so I think this is the challenge, is how do we define that leadership? Who is ready? And for most of us, if we're in the old traditional model, we're afraid that not me, I don't want to do it because it's too uncertain. And most people in most institutions, I'll talk from education, they've been trained that only the person in charge in that position is the leader. And we have failed to invite the diverse leadership capacity that's sitting around the tables to the table so that we can have difficult conversations. And many of us deny our capacity. We want to, doesn't matter what age, if we haven't used that language, it's what I deal with when I have the international students who are all post-grad and they come to me with a deficit model. I'm not sure I can do it. I'm new. I say, wait a minute, you are courageous. You showed up. You're here. You've got something. half of you are engineers. I don't have a clue. We're going to have this as a learning climate. So even our workspaces, our homes should be learning spaces where we actually reward people for risking and being invited and engaged. So I think that's why I wrote that book, Global Leadership. Apart from having trouble getting a job when I returned after an international stint,
Ah,
I really took a risk and went into medical professionalism because I was fascinated with the lack of reflection, and hierarchy of medicine is so clearly hierarchical that I think I was surprised. So it really made me dig deep within myself, and that's the challenge. For all of us, it's not just the leaders in position, it's all of us have to see ourselves as part of a global family. We are all responsible for change internally and collectively. So that's the challenge.
thank you for that, Mary. As you were talking, I heard things about like collaboration and something akin to goal alignment, and
Mhm,
it brought me back to sort of my early experiences in emerging in leadership. And I had taken over a group of people that were in disarray, lots of mistakes, lots of blaming. It was a very, toxic environment. And we did some education, we did some training, we did some goal alignment, and they became more and more motivated. They took more and more stuff on themselves. And I was very proud of this because
mhm,
they weren't consulting with me anymore. They were sort of
right.
telling me after the fact what they had done. This
Mhm,
was exactly
mhm,
where I wanted to be. And then I would go away for a
mm,
week and the whole thing would just fall apart. And I take a 2 week vacation and it didn't seem to stick.
mhm,
And
mhm,
the other day I was hearing about another young person emerging in a new leadership role that has a lot of people reporting, and he was experiencing the same sort of thing. He saw great strides in his staff and they were doing things really well, and it's in the restaurant industry. So, things like cleanliness and making sure that the money is accounted for and deposited and stuff. And he went away and nobody did the stuff that they were normally doing
mhm.
at the end of the day. And he found that really frustrating. And so I was wondering, what is this about goal alignment? Like, how do you get this goal alignment and this motivation and this collaboration to stick when you as a leader walk out the door?
It's a great question. Many times I went for staff meetings outside the school and I prayed hard that the police weren't there or that something didn't happen, a fire, something going, somebody jumping out a window. Like I've worked in high risk places. I understand. I think, I think we have to step back and look at all people who work, all employees from caretaker to administrative assistant to the crossing guard to the person at the front desk in a hotel, and start redefining the language around leadership to say, you know what, we're depending on you to lead. You are an influencer. I think most of us, if we're given a job and we're not ready, we're scared. So what do we do when the parent's not around? We regress, we have a party, we relax. It's a comfort zone. It's much easier when we can say, see, she didn't do a very good job of training us, or he didn't. It's really a normal, natural process, and we're wired for comfort. And we're not all wired, and we don't have the language. And our school systems have never, particularly in the professionals, like being a dentist or a doctor or a business person, doesn't matter, denture person, um, web design. We never see, you know what, you're a leader. Everything you do has an impact. What we do is we focus on skills, we focused on marks, we focused on competition, and we truly have not done a great job of working on reinforcing that identity. And that professional language has to start with children in kindergarten. So you're in charge of your own body and you're in charge of a space here of kindness, and it will feel better. So you have to have enough experiences where the head and the heart and the spirit feels aligned. We often, as leaders, want our goals of the institution, which of course we do want them aligned, but if people are out of alignment internally, we have to support them so they have an experience where they truly belong.
So, Mary, with what you're saying and what Leslie asked and what Sylvia asked, I have a burning platform question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Can a goal be accomplished without commitment?
I think the commitment has to come more from all, it can't just come from the leader, because a leadership is about creating a tone and a safe space. And it's really paradoxically the courage to stand alone, articulate a vision, but paradoxically to build a community of trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about relationships. And
So,
if you're unable to do that, nobody's goal is going to be aligned.
so I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I could write 10 books about it. But my question is, how mature does a leader have to be able to understand how they commit, how to get somebody else to commit?
Well, it really goes back to the initial question around challenge. If we are going to all see ourselves as leaders, one of the things that came into my awareness late in my career is this false belief that everybody took time to reflect and make sense of their experience. And that, I have to
Doesn't
say, I went
happen.
through most of my career thinking everybody must be thinking, but it's not feeling, because we all feel. We feel engaged or disengaged, but to be able to reflect on your experience and make sense of it requires a discipline. And when I was doing my doctoral work, that's what motivated me to actually begin a program there where students were asked to reflect on their clinical experience in an island that's very impoverished. And a lot of them were American, and their understanding of healthcare is not Canadian. And so it really bothered me, and that's how I ended up starting a doctorate, thinking I'm going to do the research on professionalism. And I discovered that right now we're into technology and we're into the sciences and STEM and all that. That makes sense, but we better be careful, because if we don't have the discipline, if we don't create that discipline of reflecting on their experiences, if we don't teach them how to do it, it doesn't get taught, it doesn't get learned, and it doesn't get applied. And Mandela was forced. He's a very practical leader, but he was forced when he was in his cell and wrote to his wife, Winnie, and said, I don't know if he said, thank God. He said, I'm grateful for the cell, that it gives me time to reflect and integrate. And we don't teach people how to do that. We teach them to win the mark of their professional competence. So I think that reflective capacity is what I think.
Is there an age? I mean, I've an answer to my own question, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what you think. Is there an age when an individual, man, woman, whatever continent, whatever, actually has the capacity to understand what the word reflect means and the time to do it? Is there an age?
I think it's a process. And
I know,
some people are
but
more
does it
able
start?
and more natural, but we have nowhere in our family, in our systems, in our language, do we ever say we're going to pause for 10 minutes and reflect. I've seen 5-year-olds, for 2 minutes, go close your eyes and think about what just happened and what could you do differently. And of course, I used to have students say, well, I won't kick him, but his head shouldn't come to the ground, which really they were trying to say. They saw it, but they had not taken responsibility yet. But that act of reflecting and recreating what happened, I think we have to start young. I don't think there's a magic age. I think the research shows people who science and math backgrounds, without the liberal arts, without some of those, the literature and those kinds of subject, they don't do it very easily because they like right and wrong answers. I think that's why we're missing it. in
Mm.
most of our, and now we're building capacity where we're talking about diverse work environment, and we're going to have trouble for the engineer talking to the salesperson. The salesperson's going to have to talk a different language to.
Yes,
If we don't
yes.
reflect on what's not working and what is working, and we don't take responsibility for finding the insight and checking in with somebody,
Hmm.
it's not a singular act, it's a process. If we don't teach it, no one's going to learn it.
So Mary, what is the challenge that leaders are facing in their ability or capacity or understanding or whatever you want to call it to manage their own inner state? Not
Well,
just the
mm,
existential,
I
but
know
their
it's.
own inner.
Mhm.
And do they even do it?
I think as long as they work in isolation, we'll never know. If we begin to see leadership as a collaborative process, then you have a right to question, what do I do with that experience? And I have a right to ask you. I think it's a process, and it's about self-awareness. That was never a big component. It was about success. How do you get promoted? Well, you've been successful at something or you have a competence. But we never really reviewed that continuous learning. We're grappling with it now. We're not even sure what to prioritize. Do we prioritize the technology? Do we prioritize the cultural awareness? That's why in my own book, I identified 7 competencies. One, the beginning is the connecting to self. If people are not connected to themselves, whether it's taking a walk in nature, if they're not connecting to their spirit, if they're not renewing, great leaders are burning out because they
Mm-hmm,
believe it's themselves.
mm-hmm,
There's a big
mm-hmm,
pressure, as we all know. You're
mm-hmm,
all in leadership spot. We've all felt that pressure of
mm-hmm.
giving, giving, giving till we're on empty, and add gender to it. And we're working on empty a lot. So it's going to take a whole system change around how do we understand leadership? How do we help people become aware and celebrate themselves? How do we help people stop, pause, and reflect, and then make it meaningful?
So, Sylvia, I think this is for you to take question number
Mm.
4. This is sort of fallen out just like a beautiful smorgasbord.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was listening and so fascinated by you talking, Mary, and taking me on a journey as we've been having this conversation how leaders get promoted because they're
Mm-hmm.
experts, they're professional in whatever field,
Mm-hmm.
and now they get into these positions and oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, what has
Mm-hmm.
happened? Now they can't
Mm-hmm.
lead because they were not hired to be leaders. They're hired because they're good as experts in whatever
Exactly.
that was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so there's
Mm-hmm.
confusion, so there's change, and I like how you positioned how there's just so much change. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
really the big challenge. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just so much.
And it's
Um
complex. It's not singular.
Super. And I'm not sure we've seen this kind of, this
Mm-hmm.
kind of knot
Mm-hmm.
of changes all in the same
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
same time. So the question I'm going to ask you is what is the, as a leader, what is the first step or strategy you would employ in the current confusion that we're in, and this constant change that we're facing daily, whether it's technology changes, whether it's all kinds of systemic changes that are happening. So what would be that first step or strategy that a leader should employ?
I think it's honestly, I don't mean to repeat, but they have to commit to a discipline of reflection, of reflective practice, taking a look at their experiences every day, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes. I remember hearing about Obama say, how do you manage when everybody's at you and you're making this? He said, I close my door for 10 minutes and I don't let anybody bother me. That takes discipline. And I had to learn it myself as I think, okay, I'm an open door policy leader. Isn't it wonderful? Well, no, because at the end of the day, I started to have to do my work because I was holding hands and encouraging and celebrating. I mean, I'm a people person, so I had to learn it as a discipline to say, how uncomfortable are you? Close the door, take 10 minutes, take a deep breath, connect your head and your heart. your spirit. Are you still running on empty, or are you renewing? Take 10 minutes, maybe feet on the desk, whatever position, and deep breathe. I never did this before when I taught, but I do it now with the students who, over COVID, when I said before we start class, we have to take 3 deep breaths, and you have to just focus on your breath as a gift. This is an opportunity to live, to learn, to love, to create a space here. Take 3 deep breaths, and now we're going to begin. And I've had guest speakers say, I'm sure, I've never heard anybody start a class, but my work in reflective practice and seeing the deficit and seeing it as a tool that we don't want to use because it's uncomfortable, because we're geared to thinking, I don't want anybody to see my mistake. But in fact, what it's beautiful is it's like a tapestry. If you take every incident, even if you start with what's going well and you celebrate, you have the joy of your work and you're able to model other people having that responsibility. Not a privilege, it's a responsibility. If you're an influencer, any kind, whether you're a weaver, whether you're making craft beer, you have to have a discipline where you're with yourself and say, how did that go? What went well? Where am I having difficulty? Why am I having difficulty with Sylvia? How is it we end up in conflict every time we talk? What's going on? What are my values? What am I believing? I don't trust her. She doesn't trust me. What can we do about that? Is this the time to share the reflection? No, I'm not ready. How do I dig deep? And we're not taught to do that because we're taught to be sure. We're taught to move with confidence, competence. And I'm asking you paradoxically, start a discipline to think about yourself and your experiences and make them matter. And I would do that. If I ran a school again, that's why I wrote this book, that everybody would have 10 minutes at the end of the day. Child, in silence, just close your eyes. If you want to use art, use art. If you want to just be quiet, no, you don't even have to, you can go asleep. Nobody cares. Take the discipline of being quiet to just reflect on the day. Celebrate what went well. What brought you joy? What disturbed you? What do you keep repeating? Because we avoid those discomforts because we think they're weakness, but really they're opportunities to address our failure and realize we can build and we can grow. And I think that's the hope. That's the leader, is remind people, hey, we all have something special here. Let's take a deep breath, pause, reflect, look what went well. How do we repeat that? How did this project, what went well when I wasn't here in this space? How you went to your neighbor and you took a tea break. I don't know what you did, but if it worked, it worked. I don't need to know about it. What are you going to take responsibility for? Just connecting to yourself, the lack of self-awareness. Just look at the leaders. There's a real pull to dictatorship because people are afraid. So they're like, oh, thank God it's coming from outside of me. I don't need to worry. He'll take it. He'll fix it. So we're
And if you don't, I can blame you.
exactly. You know what I'm saying? We see it operating. We see it on every level. And every time there's some people that have shown some reflection, they're considered weak. And they're named and shamed. I'm not even talking political, but we see it. And we've seen it over the COVID where people have legitimate concerns, but people polarized and refused even research. So how do we do that? We need to have people realize their own capacity for growth and their own capacity to find joy. Because we act out a lot
Your
of
own
fear, right?
capacity for what actually what are they
And purpose,
motivated?
for sure.
Yeah. What are they-
Purpose and passion.
Yeah.
Gibran said it best, work is love made visible. And in our work, whether it's even at home, whether it's your parent, whether it's your community work, that work is a sign of your love for the community. We're global citizens. And we have to shift that, not just my community, not just my condo. It matters to me that the guy out the street is sleeping there all night. I have to figure out, you know what, the one is, as a leader, what am I going to give up? And for us in privilege, we have to ask, what are we really willing to share? Because that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what the world needs more of us to kind of rebalance, look at really what the values are underpinning our life. And it's very scary. That's why change is so complex. So it starts with the individual. Without reflection, we go blindly on our way. And I remember the first time I read that from Margaret Wheatley, who's that big organizational change person from America. She is so exhausted from systemic work globally that she runs retreats now and helps people with yoga, meditation, and reviewing their own body spirit connection to their own humanity. She works with individual leaders, not systems, because the systems right now we're thinking if only we could change that, we have to kind of find ways to help ourselves stay healthy mentally and spiritually.
So the leaders themselves are disengaged and lonely and confused
and scared.
and scared, but they're not allowed to be. So they have to
Mhm,
pretend.
mhm,
So then the followers
mhm.
are now double scared.
Yep. And so what we need to start challenging people is the right questions, because that's the basis of reflection. How did this happen? What is my responsibility? What can I offer to make this different? We need to do that right from the time people start school. This is a space we all belong to. When I start at the beginning, many of the students have come from another country, so they're not used to learning space that way. They're used to the teacher chalk talk exam. I say, well, this is a joint space, so you have to have two questions. I'll give you some sample. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. A big silence. Oh, my mic's broke. How could 30 mics be broken at first? So it's what I say is, okay, I'm going to start celebrate those who have the courage to take a risk. Make a mistake, I'll be happy. Which is a crazy way to think about it, but that's learning. So we need to step back and say, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I don't want people not to like me. I remember wanting to be a leader, but I knew that crucifixion sometimes was not far off. They wanted, because I was asking questions that people weren't comfortable with. How can I get you and you? How can we have team meetings in a different way? How can you share something? What is your concern? What are we going to do? I didn't have the answers. I only had the questions. So I think it's a real paradigm shift. If
I
we're
think the
responsible
other,
for each other,
yeah,
then we have to connect to ourselves first.
yeah, you mentioned risk and being wrong. I think the other paradigm we need to shift, Mary, is the one where we punish people for taking a risk and failing far greater than we reward those who take a risk and win. And people feel punished by taking a risk, so they don't stick their neck out. They don't. They kind of stay within the system, I think, sometimes because of that. When you
Well, I think science is actually forcing us to look at evidence-based decision making. In the past, I relied on your experience, but now we're saying, what's the evidence? What's the impact of this decision going to have economically, socially, culturally? Have we got enough diversity around the table? They've just done research over COVID. I think it was Microsoft that yes, we're doing far greater in the last 10 years to hire diversity, more women in these roles, more people with different languages, different cultural background, different age and gender orientation, all that, but we haven't learned how to engage.
That's right.
Oh,
So
right.
sitting at diverse tables together, but nobody's given time or space to share a reflection, even a fun. We don't bring them together.
And Mary, I would add to that,
You
that nobody's actually taught them how to do that, the skill of it. It's very sad.
But it's also, as we look at some of the young people, I believe if we start talking about leadership as part of curriculum, as part of when you talk about dentists or whatever, you're a leader. I say it, I use that now. I just did a presentation in the Caribbean in last February, and they were looking at anti-colonization. I said the truth is, every professional institution, whether it's dentistry, whatever it is, business, we have to add the curriculum that people are leaders. And then we have to discipline them to have a habit of reflection, not all papers right or wrong. We have to be really comfortable with a qualitative answer. Get people to talk and get the insight. Share their insight. We don't have we don't have solutions for all of the refugees and the spacing and the housing, but I suspect there's other places that have a lot of models and they have some ideas. We don't ask them. And we also have this privileged way of being a leader, like we're in this position so we know better. And in fact, if we reflect on what we're not sure about, who do we ask? It's not often the people we're serving. So there's disjoints, and it's because we didn't learn it. And this is
So
the
Mary,
opportunity.
I love what you're saying. Years ago, cut to the chase here. So a very senior executive in a big organization, I won't say which, was in charge of the whole communication infrastructure technology. The new CEO, I'd asked for him to cut his budget by, I don't know, $10 million a year, something ridiculous.
Mhm.
So we had a conversation and he said, well, this is what I have to do. And I heard about you. And I wonder if you could do a survey for me. And I kind of rolled my eyes and I said, well, I could. I don't like surveys. What would we do the survey for? He said, well, I have about 1,000 people reporting to me and I don't know what they do. I said, oh. And so he said, I thought we'd do a survey. And I remember looking at him and I said, so why don't you ask them? And I thought he was going to melt down.
Mhm.
And so we designed a thing and we asked the questions and they gave us the answers.
Mhm.
And I remember we got to a point and I said, okay, we got all these answers. And it was all chunked up and down and it took months. And he said, now what? And I said, well, I think you should just tell them to go ahead and do it. And he said, well, do you think they're right? I said, I've got no idea, but they do, and you don't know. So let's go. And if it doesn't work, he said, I said, well, I don't know. We'll pick up the pieces and figure out what does work. Well, of course, it worked like a pixie dust. But it's to your point, Mary, of what do you call an engagement or collaboration or self-reflection or having a conversation or, but the discipline
Mhm.
to actually shut up and listen to somebody
Mhm.
after you've asked a really hard
Mhm.
question,
Mhm.
because questions are hard.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what the answer is, it's what the answer is.
Mhm. It's why we have difficulty having a difficult conversation. In
Yeah.
all my conflict, I ran conflict programs for almost 10 years in the school board, and I trained mediation and all that. And I still have trouble with conflict because I immediately assess, am I really going to have to nurture you so you feel safe because
Yeah,
you've
I
probably
know.
never had it? And I get told, you're so direct. No wonder we have problems. Well, yeah, I am. So I have to keep really watching myself. Was that tone nice enough? Like, I get it because it sounds like I'm confident, but really I'm quite scared having some conversations that are difficult because I know that it won't it won't make people feel comfortable.
Well,
So
I
we
can
need to
relate.
teach that.
Yeah,
We need to teach that.
I certainly can relate to that. There's a few clients, mostly men from time to time, that really, they are just so difficult. And they're nice guys and they're smart guys and all that jazz. So I'll say to my husband, Kevin, I don't know if I can do this one. And you know what he says to me? Well, have you made them cry yet? So it's a very big
For sure.
challenge.
But it's also the model if you're genuinely honest, which is,
Right.
of course, that's a construct. If you're really authentic and you have joy and you
Yeah.
really believe in the vision,
Yeah.
you're going to be vulnerable and say, I don't know, some days. You're going to say,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
I'd like to retire. Like, I think you need a sense of humor. I think you need a sense of humanity. You need to go into your room and cry a few times. I used to go into the bathroom schools when people would be angry and shouting. I'd say, oh my God. It's because I'm very short, so some people are very tall. They'd come in and start yelling over me, and I would be paralyzed. Like, say, I'll be right back. I just got to check on something. Go into the bath, take a deep breath, and say, I don't hear very well unless we're sitting down because
Oh,
I couldn't,
You couldn't
at
hold your
very
own.
no. Well, some of them are 6 feet, especially some of the men, like yelling. Like I was like, that's not
right.
how I work on this. But I was a female at a time. Both schools that I took over were each school I was took over in high risk areas were had a large history of men, and I was a woman, and they thought, well, you can't know too much. She's pretty weak. Plus, she has a counseling background. Those people, and so they're very weak. Those people, not too action oriented, and that was a mistake. I mean, that was their belief, but I had to work with it. I had to look at my
Mhm.
own patterns and say, okay, so maybe you need to use a bit more sense of humor and
Hmm.
have people in for coffee and start rewarding people for showing
Is-
up and, not being resistant openly. I remember this was so basic for me. I thought I better it was during times of people having strikes, and so people would not have supply teachers. So I would take one division and the staff of 50 people say, okay, everybody's comes to the same seats for the last 10 years. So what we're going to do today, I want you to switch with a primary and an intermediate and an intermediate and a junior. I'd like you to switch. And I had one person walk out, like stamp their feet. You're asking me to change my seat. Wouldn't want you to change an attitude. So even that was my need. It came from a reflection. You're asking people to change a way of communicating when you haven't even made a simple little request and then taken the flack.
Mm.
Because, I mean, it wasn't pleasant, but some of the simple things that I tried because I was desperate to get that engagement and to get that trust, to get that community of safety and belonging, uh, was an invitation to share power with me. You decide where you want to sit. You make the change. A lot of resistance because we're all human. We're wired to be comfortable.
In your experience, Mary, what was the biggest barrier to that? With, you obviously came up with some really, really cool ideas and through reflection, clearly you
Through
practiced it
reflection.
through
hmm
reflection. What was the
hmm
biggest barrier in introducing it? So obviously you wouldn't have known right off the bat, like, I'm going to do this. I want to see what
No,
they're going
no.
to react at.
Well,
You didn't know going into it. You've had a feeling of, or a thought that
yeah.
this will work.
But my mistake was I thought everybody reflected, and I never
Yeah,
gave
yeah.
them I
Okay.
should have shared earlier to say, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to take some time. I used to be the one to try to comfort people so that they come up with their
Mm-hmm.
idea when I should have even say, you know what? Let's all take 10 minutes. Let's get some teams going. Let me leave the place. Let you take over so where you can let me know what your solution is. And I did that as I moved through my career. But I, when you do it, I've done a PhD in leadership in education, and we just did styles of leadership and analyzed some of our own patterns. But the unconscious bias and the biases that we all, that was 10 years ago. I never did that. I've had to continue learning
So you
because
got
as I reflect, I
you,
see the patterns. I know what I'm afraid of. I know what's holding me back. I can't assume the same for you, but if I do the work and then say, you know what I had to do, you wouldn't believe how limited I was. You can't believe what I didn't know yesterday. and I'm not sure about. Like, that kind of language unsettles people. They're like, either she's crazy or it's safe. I don't have to go to her, but I can do it on my team. And I think leaders have to create spaces of safety and welcoming and belonging because we're diverse, and be willing to be humble and laugh.
I'm gonna quote Roz here. So you got out of your own way, it sounds like.
Sometimes, sometimes, sometimes. I'm a learner. To be honest, I'm a learner more than an educator. I'm a learner, and if I see all the experiences as insights for learning, I'm happy because it makes me feel alive, and it's tapping into my potential. That wherever I am, I'm more aware of our similarities and differences, and I want to create space where I make a difference. And as we age, of course, we don't want to waste time. So I assess what I'm comfortable with, and when I'm not, I do my own work. So
Quite
imagine a world where
Yeah.
we all saw
Yeah.
ourselves as leaders, all sharing responsibility.
Yeah, wouldn't that be cool?
You know what? It would be fabulous.
Yeah.
Lots of chaos, but more opportunities. People would partner up. People would be able to brainstorm because really we're missing that innovative. The creativity comes with the divergent working through. Like, it doesn't come from us all agreeing. But
No.
most of us are afraid to sit at a table because people will find out what we don't know and what we're inadequate. And that takes courage, and that's where the leadership, I think, comes in. It's okay if nobody's talking to me at the end of the day. Has something happened here in this climate where people feel more empowered to speak, to use their voice, to share who they are, then this is a better space, and I can leave now. They don't need me. And I guess that's what I really believe. I see it as almost a real gift. Leadership, we all have it. We just don't want it because it's work to develop it. And we look at the models we have, and it's not working. And our institutions are blowing up, and they're still trying to do the same thing in a rapid pace without the discipline of stopping to say, gee, where am I stuck? So I think the conversations need to be different.
I'm on board with your entire approach,
Thank you.
philosophy. I love your sense of humor, Mary.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm remembering as we're talking so many times that were so much fun. And I
Mhm,
think you'd come for an hour and stay for 2. I can't remember, but
mhm.
anyway, it's lovely to see you. I'm so
Beautiful.
glad
Thank
that we
you.
got to catch up again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I remember one of the beautiful things when I went the first time they allowed me to do reflective practice. I did it in simulation lab, so it was an ER room, a fake plastic patient, and the patient died on the table.
Oh
And
dear.
of course, there were lots of chaos in the two doctors. And I was supposed to observe. And when they figured out that, they looked at the bag, and it turned out that they didn't read the do not resuscitate. So there was lots of problems. It was a fake person. So, but then they left me to the reflection. And I had people crying like, I didn't expect my patient to die. I said, look, you're only in your first 6 months. It's plastic. Calm down. Calm down. He didn't hear you. He didn't see you. He didn't, when they have to pump regularly, there's a rhythm. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So there were little things that either they didn't do well, or they took their hand off the patient when there was chaos. Like who do I, like there were lots of things happening, and it was their first time working as a team. And so when they left, I had people there that said, I don't want anybody to die. I'm leaving medicine. And they went to
Wow.
they went to do a PhD in research. I had 2 people like that after a session. They were angry at me, but they realized they were in the wrong. And some people had not dealt with some of their death. Like, that guy reminded me of my grandfather, and I didn't go to his funeral. They would start. I said, this is beautiful, because your heart and your head have to be together. How are you going to serve a patient? Like, it was beautiful. And that was just before I made the decision. You know what? I know it's crazy, but I'm going to do my PhD. I want to learn more. And I want to be in a spot where I can say that I've done the research.
Lovely, Mary.
That's
So
wonderful.
crazy. Cost a lot of money in the American, but it really, it's to me, I feel very blessed because work is love made visible. And we are all in a part trying to figure it out. In our workspaces are changing. We don't even know whether we're at home or on like I teach on remote. I've had people call me after the subway. Don't ask me. I'm on the subway. Well, your team's waiting for I have to laugh a lot. Hurry up. Because people are desperate. They're house hunting. They're living in very crowded positions, you know? And we're asking them to come here and get acculturated in 2 years and get a job. And like the pressures I've seen, I've really been quite humbled with the bravery of these young people. If we give them space, we're going to learn from them
Yeah.
because they bring us something quite different, resilience and courage, I think.
You clearly try to get to know the people that you lead either in your classes or in your teams.
Right.
How do you do that, and what are you trying to learn about those people?
It's a good question. I think the secret is curiosity.
Mm.
I am so fascinated by what makes you tick or what's motivating you or what brings you joy. I'm really interested in that. So I remember one of the staff people who was always cutting out early from work. And I had a lot of judgment about like, what the heck? No, sneaking out as soon as the bell rang, like ready, coat, gone. And I said, you know what? I got to be curious rather than judgmental. So I would brought the person and said, you know what? You're in a great hurry. I wish I could go with you. Um, where are you going? Like, are you having an affair? Like, what's going on? What's speeding you up at this age? And she told me how she was feeding a partner. And it was her mother in a hospital. She had to go across. And when I realized all of the things she did, getting up at 4 in the morning, making the meal for the family, I was like, I had a whole different approach. So I know my pattern. I know what I get judged, what I judge. So I say, let me find out about that. Let me ask them. Or ask them, if you're in my spot, what would you suggest?
Mhm.
If you could give you a magic wand, tell me what you want me to do today. What will bring you some less stress? What is it? What do you need? I don't think that's blunt all the time, but you get to know people. You feed them in a way. You feed them encouragement, right? Just like you have a coffee date.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for your work. We don't do enough of that, appreciating our humanity, do we? We're really, especially leaders, we're so driven for results and goals. So I really think it's the connection. It's the creating a space where connections can happen, where people can care about the least of us and help each other grow. That's all we have.
That's all we have. I've learned so much listening to you, Mary.
Oh, thank you.
It just
Thank you.
grounded. It just grounded me. It grounded what
Beautiful.
leadership
Mm-hmm.
should be about.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this major program at the city, and we talk about people leader. We have to reach the people leader, and the epiphany that I've had listening to you, it's all people are leaders.
Exactly.
So if we change that sentence to how do we reach the people leaders, how do we make all people leaders, because that's what really it's about.
It's really about helping people tap into their potential and see themselves as a leader.
Yeah.
So I don't say, are you? I say, you realize you're a leader, you have a problem. Like, I need to hear from you. You're the leader. I'm just here to learn from you. Come on, let's. And they're appalled. Like, they're just, this woman's a bit off. Like, that's not the paradigm they're used to, particularly with business and engineering students. They want to know what's right. Is there a mark? And I want to get an A. I say, well, there is no A. It's going to be qualitative papers, reflection papers. And I've had people after class to me, you want me to think. Is that what you're saying? I'll give you an example. I do career development in one of the courses. So the first question after their Myers-Briggs, what are 3 values that are important to you that have to be in the workplace? Most of them are business. It's a post-grad program, and I'm doing the career. And a woman stayed after and said, I'm having trouble with the question on the paper. What part? You asked for 3 values. I don't have any. I only know my mother's. I said, you know what? There's a textbook with 3 pages. That's one way. Let's take the book out. I had to not laugh. I had to really feel compassion because I can't relate to that, right? So
Right.
okay, so whose values? Only what my mother tells me. I mean, I've been on my own since I can't tell you, so I can't relate to that. So I said, you know what? Tell me what your degree, you got a marketing degree or whatever it was. That takes a lot of creativity. Would you say creativity is important when you go to the work? That's right. And that's what we did. We went through, what are your experiences? Where have you worked? What do you like to do? Do you like art? Do you like what? I love marketing. Well, what about that? I had to work it through, and believe me, she left feeling so empowered. And all I did was
Yeah.
ask questions.
Mhm.
And when you say, how do you connect? I was just curious, like,
Yeah.
I know you know, but you're just not used to answering like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right, Mary.
So I thought it was beautiful. I'm never
I
going to forget
totally
this
agree.
girl. Beautiful.
Mhm.
I get lucky every day. I get to learn something new, and I get to reflect on how really rich I am and how impoverished. So I need to keep looking at ways to improve who I am.
And today you shared it with us, Mary, and wanted
Thank you.
to take the moment
Thank you.
to thank you for
Thank you.
being here today. And you know, we could be here for hours.
Right.
You put me into a trance. I could just sit here and listen to
Beautiful.
you. Just so nice. And
Well, I wish that I could hear more about your experience so we could really do some applied reflective work, because that's the magic that I do with my coaching is getting to reflect and dig deep and not run away. There's a pattern there. Let's have
All
some
right,
fun
girls,
here.
I've got
Okay?
a house in the Caymans we can use for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you so
sounds
much.
good.
This has been absolutely, I have all these little notes. I haven't looked at anything because the truth is when you are who you are, it comes out. You can't fake it.
Yeah.
So
Thanks again,
you are
Mary.
also
Yeah.
doing a great job because you're sharing the lessons with other people on your great topic. Beautiful. Perfect timing.
Thank you for your time very much. It
Thank
was
you.
very,
Thank you.
and I really love your approach about this reflection. That's
Mhm.
giving me
Thank you.
something to reflect upon.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, I'll have to give you a copy of my book.
Yeah,
It'll take you
I
through
definitely
7
will
months
read
of.
it.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much for being here with me today.
Thanks so
Perfect.
much,
Big
Mary.
pleasure.
Right.
Big
Take care.
pleasure.
Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.